Well, now getting down to 9 Acton Road. We've had some questions answered by town council. Paul, if you don't mind, I'd like you to run through them, just so the audiences at home can know what we're up against.
Absolutely. So my letter dated December 6, 2019, I answered a number of questions that had been sent to me by the board. The first question stated that in section 195-124F deals with property adjoining Beaver Brook and contains provisions granting some a resident units bonuses. F1 and F2 are clearly additive given the in addition clause in F2. F3 does not have such a clause. Does this imply that F3 bonus is not additive but separate from that granted in F1 and F2? And my response was section 195-124F3 of the Chelmsford zoning bylaws states that a bonus of up to 50% where an existing property is modified, such as the removal or portion thereof of a building and/or parking area, that would result in subsection F1 and/or 2 above. So my interpretation of that provision was essentially that it was an alternative to the use of F1 and F2. It gives the same total bonus of up to 50%, and it incorporates by reference the intent of sections F1 and F2. So again, my interpretation is that section F3 is an alternative to using F1 or F2, so it's not additive to those provisions. Next question I had was table 2. Maximum number of dwelling units row shows 4 units per building allowed for multifamily buildings. It has been claimed that the L3 row under lot standards, which requires a minimum of 5,600 square feet for the first 2 units and 1,800 square feet per unit thereafter, implies that this is a 59,000 square foot property can support roughly 32 units in one building. Does the L3 row govern number of units, or does it govern only minimum lot area? And is the provision in the permitted building CV row saying that multifamily is not allowed in the frontage zone waivable? And my response is that my interpretation of table 2 L3 is that it imposes a density restriction that requires a minimum lot area of 5,000 square feet for the first 2 dwelling units, an additional 1,800 square feet of lot area for each additional dwelling unit. And that's the only really density requirement that's contained in that bylaw.
Okay, can I ask a question to maybe clarify a little bit? Because I think I wrote some, I remember writing some of this question. So my understanding from what you said is that this does not grant number of units. It simply provides, so what you do is you determine the number of units somewhere else, and then you see if this says you have sufficient lot area. That's the way that the approval works.
This is the only density provision that I really see in this bylaw. So to extent that there is a limit on density, this is where it is contained.
Okay.
Again, it's a special permit provision. So the board ultimately is going to be making the determination as to what's the appropriate density for a particular site. So this provides a maximum density, but it doesn't state specifically that any particular density is what's allowed on it.
Nor, if I understand correctly, nor does it say if you have this much space, you can have this many.
Again, it's a special
Automatic
permit
granted
requirement.
then. Yeah.
So
You have to
any
go elsewhere.
project that comes before you is going to have to show that, the lot in and of itself and how it's situated can handle as many units as being proposed.
Got you.
I also stated that additionally, it does not appear that units may be allowed within the frontage zone at the ground floor level. That is a provision, and we'll get into that in multiple spots, but section 195-124 of the bylaw does not seem to be a portion that is waivable under the provisions of section 195-130. So in the frontage zone requirement is located in section 195-124. So my interpretation is that that's not waivable under 195-130B. There was also a question with regards to the requirements contained in Table 2. That was a little bit more difficult for me to really figure out which provisions were applicable to which specific provisions of the bylaw. Some of the categories within Table 2 have specific references to specific provisions of the bylaw, and that made it very easy to determine if there was a reference to Section 195-125 or 195-127, either 126, 129. All of those, the headings are listed in Section 195-30B as being waivable under the bylaw. So it's, you really kind of need to take a look at the Table 2 and figure out which provisions are applicable to which sections of the bylaw to make a determination as to whether they're waivable. But it did appear that the majority of the provisions within Table 2 would be applicable to Section 195-125 or 126, 127, or 129, and those would be waivable.
All right. Can I
Go ahead.
poke a little bit at that one? Okay, so I went back and took another look, and I unfortunately didn't bring my big copy with me. But as I recall, Table 2 discusses a multifamily dwelling, or multifamily building, or whatever it is, and talks about something up to 12 units. Was it up to 12? Then section, Table 1, it talks about what a multifamily building is, and I think it kicks you off to Table 2. Does that limit of 12, at least that's what I wrote down in my notes, does that limit of 12 limit us in an absolute way to number of units that we can put in any building in this?
Well, again, only to the extent of whether it's waivable or not.
Yeah, and that's,
And I
let me
think,
see if I can find the,
yeah, I'm getting up Table 2 right now.
multifamily building. Yeah, here in the column, maximum number of dwelling units per building, 12 in the CC, it says 12 in CC.
Which table are you looking at?
Yeah, I'm looking at Table 2, 4 in CV, yeah.
So just 4 on TV.
Down to six.
Yeah.
Right, and so that's under lot standards?
That's under maximum number of dwelling units per building, which is under lot standards.
Right. Which I believe, and that was one of the gray areas, but I think that looking at the specific text of the bylaw itself, it appears as though it fits within Section 195-125, more so than any other section,
And is therefore,
and therefore is
Waivable,
potentially
okay.
waivable.
okay, potentially, you know, you can't, okay. That's,
But we're starting off with the baseline that Mike,
well, the baseline's 4, actually, for CV. I looked at, I'd seen the 12, that's actually for CC.
That's 4.
That's 4 for CV. And that's the baseline, so anything above 4 would have to be explicitly waived.
And the rest of the questions tend to be repetitive to this
Yeah.
particular subject. So the number 3 was, what precisely is the frontage zone? See Section 195-124 and the various references to CV versus CV frontage in Table 1 and Table 2. Does it refer only to a 40-foot strip along the road, or does it include the entire property which fronts on the road? This becomes relevant because there are restrictions in this section concerning allowing commercial uses only on the first floor. And I note that the frontage zone described in Section 195-124E applies to contiguous land area along the primary public streets within the underlying CV district. My interpretation of this provision is that the 40-foot requirement applies to the entire portion of the lot abutting the primary public street within the district.
Okay, but beyond that 40 feet,
It's,
there's no restriction as to commercial or non-commercial
Correct.
in the first floor.
and the frontage zone is only the first 40 feet
It's only the first 40 feet, okay. So I wanted to be clear on that.
From the street,
from the
Yeah.
On the
street.
street?
from the street, 40 feet in?
So it's not the whole property?
Contiguous land area along the primary public street within the underlying CV district. It's the
So wouldn't
40
that
feet
be-
within that.
Wouldn't contiguous be the entire lot?
No, the frontage zone is a 40-foot zone. We'll go back to
I think that
Section
makes
195-124.
Okay.
so while Paul's doing that, I do have a question for the board. I know we're talking about 9 Acton Road, but Paul gave us an interpretation of the VCOD for the entire Centaur Village area. So whatever is determined this evening does this set a precedent going forward for other projects?
Well, the interpretation is the interpretation. If we
Right.
get it right, we get it right. I wouldn't say it's exactly precedent-setting, seeing most of these things are special permit types of activities and are waivable, but it gives us the baseline. I mean, what I think we need to get to is what is absolutely allowed, what is absolutely not allowed, and how big is the area in between that, with combination of special permits and other waiving mechanisms, can be allowed, subject to the discretion of the board. And I've been trying to find out where those boundaries are, so I know what space we have to work in. That's why I framed at least some of the questions that I asked that way. And I think that, I don't know, what do you think?
I mean, I think that you want to be consistent.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
whatever interpretation that you decide is applicable to one project, you should try to make sure it applies to any further projects.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you open yourself up to a claim that you're being arbitrary and capricious.
Well, not if it doesn't fit in one area and
So,
it's.
but that, I'm talking about an interpretation of the bylaw, is in terms
Okay,
of what
yeah.
you're allowed to do or what you're not allowed to
Yep.
do under the bylaw. That should be consistent. Now, one project is gonna be situated differently than another, and something that's appropriate on one site is not necessarily appropriate on another. But the bylaw should be applicable to each
Gotcha.
project in the same manner.
I also, the waivers that we give for what they're taking and doing too, like the walkway waiver, it's gotta be based on what they're doing. If we-
Absolutely.
It's up to 50%. It's up to, we have discretion on that.
And
It's
it's-
all up to us, we're bored, we take votes on it, we figure it out.
But I think a lot of the value of going through these questions and others like it is so we can kind of set some baselines, and the next time we have a VCOD situation, we've already been through training. I mean, I kind of wish we'd done this a year or two ago, but
All right,
better late than never.
all right.
It does say behind frontage zone, so there might be 40 feet.
Right, so the residential prohibition in the frontage zone, it says residential uses shall not occupy the ground floor of a building in the portion of said building within the first 40 feet of lot depth, measured from the public street right of way.
Okay.
So if the building's more than 40 feet back.
Yeah, so anywhere beyond that 40 feet, you can have residential on the first floor. It's only in
Okay.
that first
Good. So
40
that
feet.
clarifies
And
it.
is that waivable?
That I do not read
Need
to
to
be
be
waivable. And we'll
don't
get,
think it is.
we'll get to the review of section 195-130B in a minute.
Doesn't matter in our case
So the
anyways.
concern I have is not whether you
It's
can
outside
put
the 40 feet.
residential past that 40 feet.
Okay,
The concern I have is whether frontage zone is by property or by band of land. Because multifamily is not permitted in CV frontage. It requires that you have a commercial usage in CV frontage properties.
Regardless whether or not it's 40 feet? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's what I really wanna know, is,
so it states buildings fronting and oriented towards these streets are targeted for commercial
That's
and
another
mixed
one. That's an
commercial
issue.
residential use.
and if I look at the
So the residential is
table
certainly not
2,
prohibited.
at the end of it, second page, permitted buildings and lot types by underlying zoning district.
I think.
Under multifamily, within the CV, which is what we're looking at, it's planning board except in the frontage zone. So you're not allowed to put multifamily in a CV frontage zone property, according to this table.
1 second, I'm waiting
Yeah?
for it to load.
I mean, that's what I'm seeing.
You want the hard copy that you can just flip the page?
So that's under building and design standards,
That's under building design standards.
which would be part of what is waivable.
Okay, so building and design standards are waivable. So we can just blow it out if we want to.
If you're following the criteria for the waiver in section 195-130B.
So why put it in here if it's, yeah. All right,
Oh, and an additional matter of curiosity, when we say 40 feet, when we define the zone as 40 feet, the frontage zone, if you, obviously, if no part of the building gets closer than 40 feet, you're outside of the frontage zone. Suppose you have a building right at 40 feet that has porticos and porches that extend over and into this space.
I would recommend not having those
Okay,
to avoid confusion.
So we do define building and structure differently.
yeah.
Somehow I lost it. So number 4, and I think this will be helpful in terms of giving the overview of
Yeah,
how
right.
Section 195-130B works. There's a prohibition of multifamily buildings in the CV frontage
Yeah.
zone in Table 2, permitted building/lot types considered a land use, and does the planning board have the authority to waive this prohibition under Section 195-130B, alternative compliance? My response is I do not interpret Section 195-130B of the bylaw as allowing the board to waive compliance with the frontage zone requirement. This section allows the board, and by which I meant the 40-foot
Yeah.
prohibition, because that's contained in Section 195-124. So this section allows, Section 195-130B allows the board to waive, modify, or vary standards for building and lot types, parking, landscaping, and open and civic space types as set forth in this bylaw. And I go on to note that building and lot types are addressed in Section 195-125 of the bylaw. Parking is addressed in Section 195-126 of the bylaw. Landscaping is addressed in Section 195-127 of the bylaw. And public and private civic space standards are addressed in Section 195-129 of the bylaw. Because the frontage zone requirement, and again, that's that 40-foot
Yeah.
ban on residential, is contained in Section 195-124 of the bylaw, I do not believe that that is waivable
Okay.
pursuant to Section 195-130B. Requirements contained in Section 195-124 or contained in Table 1 or Table 2 with a specific reference to Section 195 or 124 are thus not waivable, in my opinion. Number 5, again in 195-124E, it states unequivocally that only commercial use is allowed on the ground floor. Is this discretionary, i.e., can the planning board waive the commercial on ground floor requirement? In my response, as I noted above, I do not interpret Section 195-130B as authorizing waivers of the provisions of Section 195-124. Moreover, I don't believe the board can rely upon the waiver provision contained in Section 195-125E, either, as that provision is specific to the requirements of Section 195-125. Number 6, it has been suggested that Section 195-130B gives the planning board the authority to waive unit densities. On the other hand, 130B talks only about building and lot types, parking, landscaping, and open and civic spaces. Does this provision allow discretion, other than discretion laid out in other parts of the bylaw, beyond this list? My response, as I noted above, the applicable density requirement appears to be contained in Section L3 of Table 2. This provision does not contain a specific reference to Section 195-124, and it appears to be tied most closely to Section 195-125. Accordingly, it is my interpretation that the density restriction contained in L3 may be waived by the board pursuant to the provisions of Section 195-130B. Question number 7 from the board was Section 195-127B covers transitional buffers. It allows breaks for vehicular access, the implication being that the traffic would cross the buffer. The 9-Acton road plan shows a driveway down half the side of the property running over transitional buffers. Does this comport with breaks for vehicular access? My response, I do not believe that a driveway running down half the side of the property would constitute a break for vehicular access. However, the provisions of Section 195-127 may be waived by the board pursuant to the process set forth in Section 195-130B. Question number 8, Section 195-126D appears to limit curb cuts to 2 for the 9-Acton Road project. Is this waivable? And I said the provisions of Section 195-130B allow waiver of the requirements contained in Section 195-126. And finally, question 9 from the board was Table 2, building height, B5 roof pitch, forbids flat roofs on multifamily buildings. Is this prohibition waivable under Section 195-130B? My response, according to Table 2, the requirements under B5 roof pitch is listed under the building placement standards. The subsection entitled Building Placement of Specific Uses contains an express reference to section 195-124. However, no such reference is included under the subsection Building Heights. Since this subsection is more consistent with the requirements contained in section 195-125, it is my interpretation that the board may waive these requirements pursuant to the process set forth in section 195-130B.
Okay.
So essentially, to summarize, the planning board does have a lot of flexibility, except for when it comes to the first 40 feet. Special powers.
Anything within section 195-124 is not waivable under the bylaw as currently constituted. Other provisions are waivable, presuming that you follow the process set forth in section 195-130.
All right. You have anything you want to add to that, counsel, or?
I guess maybe, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for the record, my name is Philip Eliopoulos. I'm an attorney here in Chelmsford. Law office is at 9 North Road. Paul, thank you very much. I know that was probably a lot of work. I appreciate it. What I gather from town council's opinion is the project as proposed is approvable. We're outside of the 40 feet. The building is completely outside, a little bit more than 40 feet. So there's no requirement to have commercial on the first floor based on being outside of that 40-foot frontage zone, is what I'm hearing?
That's my interpretation,
Okay.
yes. I will say, Mr. Chairman, I was not asked to review the project plans. I have not given any interpretation as to whether it's approvable or not.
Yeah, that's
I
fine.
only reviewed the questions that I was asked.
Thank you.
So I think, from my perspective, and based on town council's take of the bylaw, the project would be approvable by the board, which we didn't know last time we met. There was concern as to whether the board had even the authority to approve certain aspects of our project. So I think what would be helpful is, with that in mind, my sense is that the board, from the earlier meetings, had a concern with some of the number of units, the height of the building. But with town council's opinion, with the board's ability to approve a project such as this, I guess it would be helpful to really, get specific as to what the board would be comfortable approving, or what aspects of the project, with town council's opinion in front of them, the board would have concerns about. Because I think really, because we didn't know where we stood, we haven't really gotten, to specifics as to
Gonna get you
what.
some answers.
Yeah, I think so. I think it'd be helpful to get some guidance, because I will say that with respect to the abutter next door, and that seems to be a concern that the board has, we have met with the abutter. And whatever project that may get approved by this body, we understand that it's only the first phase, and that the second phase is going to take into consideration abutter input. And so we do feel as though, with regard to our only direct residential abutter, that we can satisfy whatever concerns they may have with the project. But we understand that any approval that this body would take at this first stage is still going to be contingent on flushing that out. And we're committed to working with that abutter. And so, to the extent that the board has concerns about that abutter and looking at the project, we understand that those concerns have to be met during phase 2 of whatever process may unfold here. And that no decision that the board reaches at this stage is going to bind them to approve a project at the end of the day if the abutter has concerns that can't be resolved. So I guess I would just ask the board to keep that in their minds, that no approval as at this stage of the process is going to prevent this board from denying the project later on if the abutter has significant concerns and that can't be addressed. And we think we can. We've had some good, productive conversations, and we're willing to continue those. So I just want to put that out there as well. We do recognize that that's the biggest issue, is that direct abutter.
All right, well, all right, you're all set? Now,
Yeah.
the board's gotta work between themselves here and come up with some answers.
Yeah.
So, I'll refer to you, Mike. I know basically 32 units is what we had by right.
Something like that, yeah.
All right. Now, we had a couple of exemptions, that lot density things that we gotta take and hash out and figure out what percentage we're gonna be comfortable with. I know the counselor had numbers that he was interested in, but, I think we gotta work out. I don't know if anybody's had any time to think about it, yeah. I mean, so basically, from what council told us, I believe we're allowed F1 and F2, and F3 is discretionary. You know, we're not gonna take, I don't think we're gonna allow all of it here anyways. I don't know if you wanna just go down through it one at a time?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm game, and
All
I,
right, and we'll take and go from there.
my opinions.
So. F1, allowed a 25% density for 39 units. I don't think we were at 39, I think we were at 32.
So just a quick question to ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to Mike mentioned it earlier about the
Yeah.
CV,
Yep,
allows 4 units.
That's right.
So
yeah.
how do we get, can you get to how do you get to the 32 to start? So we're all in agreement with that. We've all said it's 32.
Yeah.
But how do you get
How
to the
did we get
32?
there?
No, we
I
didn't
thought it was
all
on the
say that.
table.
No, it's been saying for a couple of weeks now, it's 32
I
base.
think we related that to grist mill.
Okay. So on this
Grist mill
property
is the
here,
baseline, I
Oh.
think.
how do
I
we
think
get
that's
to the
what happened.
baseline first?
And it's supposed to be mixed use, but we would be waiving that, right?
The back past the 40 feet.
It's outside the
Right.
40.
It's outside the 40 feet, so that is a lot less of a concern now, I think, than it was, given that I understand this building appears to be 40 feet back, although it's pushing a little bit with the
like
portico and
41,
the porches.
42, but
I
we
think it's
could-
41 and a half when I
Right.
looked at the drawings.
Your porches and your overhangs are in the 40-foot zone, but that's not livable space. It's just a structure.
It's not building, it's structure.
It's not
It's structure.
building.
Structure. All right, so,
So how do we get from 4 to 32?
Based on
Evan?
the square footage of
do
the
you have an
lot.
answer for that?
Well, the way I understand it is that 32 units could be built on that site. If you comply with the 4 max units per building, you would need 8 buildings. Right? So that's the literal interpretation of by right, which I think is what you're looking for.
Yes,
Yes.
and that's a starting
Somebody
point.
came into you and said, I'm building 32 units, 8 buildings, each one contains 4 units.
Yeah, that would fit on that.
That would be by right. That would be the literal interpretation of those 2 columns.
Yeah.
Could you put
That
8
is, as town
buildings
council
on
is
that?
indicating, via the flexibility, the applicant and the board has the ability to have a conversation to see whether 8 4-unit buildings is what
Yeah.
makes sense at this particular location, based upon the project and the context within the neighborhood. So you have the right to grant the waivers to have this conversation.
I understand that. Now, has anybody showed us how they could have got the buildings on this property where that's what we're dealing with?
Like a by right plan?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I mean, that's something
Yeah.
that,
Could you build 8 buildings with parking and
In the
septic?
zoning.
You'd be
yeah, I don't
be a
think so.
tough call. It would take one brilliant architect.
Yeah,
There's a
Maybe
few
you
of
got
them
one.
around, but,
Well, what's the separation that's required between buildings for the fire code? Because that's what's.
why are we the ones
dictated.
coming up with that?
no, I mean, we don't have to come up with that.
Why don't they show us, you know?
No,
So then the
we're
question
looking,
is-
we're looking at what could be allowed by right, because it is important baseline here. If I'm getting this correctly, we gotta have a baseline that we're starting with. And if you're gonna take and say 30, 50, 10, 12, whatever you're saying, we have to have a baseline that we can legally stick with.
Which Mike said was 4.
4 per building.
Four
For
per
building, the
Per
question
building.
is, how many buildings can you fit on that site and show that you can get them?
That's one way of looking at it.
That's one way of looking at it, that's correct.
Another way of looking at it is, the site already has a 30,000 square foot building on it.
Yeah,
Right, so
It's
there's,
not-
again, there's a variety of ways to look at this.
I understand.
The way I interpret the 4 units per building in the CV was smaller sites. Many of the sites within the CV are very small, and Bob's Coins, it's a very small site.
Yeah, but you're not gonna fit 4 units in that building either.
Well, if you want, you could go up. You could go up and then you ask for a waiver of
You have
parking.
no parking.
You could ask for a waiver of parking.
There's some places like that on Beacon Hill.
Behind Bob's, there's 2 parking
I
spots for the whole
understand,
building.
I understand. So, I think part of the analysis for the board is to figure out what was the intent of this bylaw as it pertains to some of the larger properties. This is one of the larger properties in the CV, just like Grist Mill is one of the larger properties.
We understand that. You know, basically, we've taken input from him, but we all have to make a decision how we wanna come up with this.
That's right.
And, you know, Evan's given us a couple different ways to look at this, and we're gonna have to put up to a vote and decide, do you wanna, you know, is that something you wanna look at?
Well,
And we have another couple of questions here too to take and get by.
yeah.
I don't know if we wanna,
You're using this.
we've got square footage for the building,
Yeah.
or we have the 4 lots per unit. 4 units per building, and
How many
this,
can fit on
and how
the
many
lot.
buildings can fit on that lot, by right. And it's pretty clear, that's what it says. Does the board want to stick with that, or do we want to go with
Well,
square
I
footage?
can give you I'll give you an opinion if you'd
Go
like.
ahead, give me an opinion.
My opinion on that particular point is that I think it makes, in this particular case, it may make some sense to consolidate what otherwise might be 8 buildings. On the other hand, I don't want to consolidate them in a way that permits more units per that single building than the individual buildings would have given us on the same site. And I'm hard pressed to see how you can come up with 8 buildings on that site of any kind of size, plus, the space in between them and the parking around them. So that's why I'm in a little bit of a quandary here. Certainly, I think one building probably makes more sense than multiples. But I'm afraid that might be getting used as a way around what would otherwise be a fairly stiff limitation on the capabilities of that project, of that property to hold units. You see what I mean?
How do you feel, Mike? What do you have in
I was just trying to get to a baseline.
No, but we have to,
All I'm asking is, because if we're gonna make waivers and grant them and additional, I wanna
I
get to the
agree.
baseline of
Yeah.
what,
Yeah.
is it 32?
Yeah.
Is it 16? Is it 48?
Yeah, I agree.
Do you have an idea?
Do you want
for
that
baseline now?
baseline
Do you want-
before the
No,
bonus
I don't-
densities?
Oh, absolutely, because that's how you base it.
I'm
it's on the
basing it
percentage.
off the facts that are in the
Can
book
we-
here right now.
Can
And I
you
think
percentage on the density?
going,
We can also change the percentage on the densities too, but
Yeah.
we,
Well, my point is, if
But
you
you
say
need to know what the
32 and then you
legal
add the
starting
bonus
point is.
densities,
Yeah.
now you're back up to 48.
Well, I mean,
one structure is better than 8.
absolutely, I agree 100%.
One structure is better than 8. We gotta be reasonable here and common sense here. It's just
Yeah.
that you're gonna have another project that's coming down the pike right after this one.
Oh,
And then
absolutely.
they're gonna see what we're gonna say and gonna say, well, we can't get 8 buildings on there.
Well, I think the
Eight is just a number
baseline
that
for
somebody
this.
threw out. We could be
Yeah.
talking, we could be saying 6 right now.
Because we don't know it by right.
Well, I think the baseline here is the number of the number of buildings that you could reasonably put on this multiplied by 4,
Until we know that, how can we actually?
not to exceed 32, which would be,
Can I ask a question of town
Yeah.
council?
Sure.
Paul, is there anything in this CVOD bylaw that would limit the proximity of these buildings to each other?
that'd be building code.
No, I think it's gonna be building and fire code.
Yeah.
Right, but no, nothing in terms of this, the bylaw itself.
There's no
Well,
setback between
except-
buildings on a site in the bylaw.
I mean, the only thing would be the exterior buffers.
Then let's
on the
talk, we
outside
would want to
edges of
see
The
green
edge, the edge of
space
the
and-
lots.
Yeah.
In the 40-foot exclusion.
Yeah, and the 40-foot exclusion.
Yeah. So then the question is, how many units could they put, how many
Reasonably.
buildings could they?
Reasonably get on there. I mean, you gotta
On that
remember, it's a hot
space
top
given-
site, it's a, you know, they got room to go back.
Yeah,
And what did we have for a total of frontage here on this lot?
and there's a limit on two
Couple hundred feet,
two driveways.
What they have?
200 or something? Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm off. Can you read it?
I'm trying to figure out what the total frontage is.
I think it was 280 or 300.
Might be as high as 300?
Philip, do you know what the total frontage is on this lot?
This is just showing the setbacks,
Yeah,
not showing the overall dimension of it.
yeah, but
I'm trying
someplace
to
in
use,
here
trying to use
showing
frontage to
us-
figure out how many buildings you can.
Oh, I'm just trying to see how many, you know, if you would divide it up, you know,
You did A and R lots?
I'm just trying to run some numbers through my head, that's all.
That's for this, the neighbors.
Oh, yeah, but how can you get the frontage?
Evan, you know, how many do you think we could put on here? Realistically, with what we typically ask for?
I mean, all I can say is, you've used a methodology, improving grist mill. Town council's memo validates that methodology. Some of you were here, some of you weren't here. Tonight, I think you're trying to come up with different methodologies, different ways to answer the same questions. So,
Can I ask you a question? What the methodology did they use for gristmill? I wasn't here.
my understanding, my recollection was they came in with the baseline, then they walked through the density bonuses. However, they told the board that they weren't asking for density bonuses per the density bonus provision.
How'd they get to the baseline? That's all we're trying to do.
Based on the square footage of the land.
Which
Based on
is
square
what you
footage.
shared
Because
with
it
us
had a lot of
before.
acreage.
We're
There's
talking
no-
like
there
an
was
8
Yeah, but
acre.
there was a lot of
Like
acreage,
8
Yeah.
acres.
8
You
acres.
could, in theory, have
Right,
put
that's how they got
a
to
lot of
70
buildings
units
on it.
versus
Yeah.
32.
Square
Well,
footage.
Think
I
about
mean,
like
if you wanna
doubling the size.
do an apples to apples comparison, Grist Mill was 1.3 acres of pavement and building, not talking the wetlands. So
Yeah.
what, bring up the GIS, it's about 1.3 acres of previously disturbed area. 9 Acton Road is 1.3 acres as well.
But
So
it
if you're,
doesn't
if
have the
you're,
advantage of all that open space.
all the wetlands, right,
That's
which they
right.
ended up donating to the town.
Right,
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that was in the
no, but-
calculation though, was it?
and I
But
don't
it
think it
didn't
was
It didn't
all
have the
wet.
frontage zone, that's
Some of
the
it
only
was.
difference
That
between the
wasn't
two.
Was that in the calculation? All the
Yes.
wetlands and everything going
Yes.
to the
Yes.
side?
So it was all in.
So comparing
Yeah.
apples to
Well-
apples, what do you have?
What would you have then?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that was 5, 6, 7 acres of land.
So you're talking 8.5 acres versus
If-
1.3?
If that's how the board wants to look at this, yes.
No,
I
you're
look
bringing it
at
up for an example,
I
so
look at
I'm
it
trying to
as-
compare
as-
apples
as
to
apples
apples.
to apples. What's on the site, what can be used and what's on the site now,
Right.
right?
only-
Someone else could have a different methodology.
Could you
Only
give us an
about-
answer on that? though?
Only about 3 acres was used on that project. The other 3 acres, and
Yeah.
approximately, was not, we donated to the town.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically on a 3 acre parcel.
Yeah, but you gotta
even
remember,
less
when
than
you
that-
came, wait a minute, when you came for us, I was sitting here. We came in with an 8 acre piece of property.
It was not 8, it was 6.
So
but that's
whatever it
neither-
was.
Yeah.
We came in with a large piece of property, and that's
Absolutely.
what we were trying to, yes.
That's what
you
we
were-
calculated
yeah,
off
we-
of.
Yeah, we were figuring, we were getting so much open space, we were doing this, we're doing that. We had a large piece of property to start cutting down. I don't know if you want to start going apples to apples, or whatever you want to do, but we got to come up with something here. This is very controversial through town, which we gotta, you know, we're gonna have people that are upset no matter what we do here. So, you know, that's just the way our lives are. Yes, I'd like to see some sort of project here.
Yeah.
I really think that, agreed that there's something going here. Whether this developer does it or somebody else, we need to have something here. But we also gotta have something, and, you know, I hear what you're saying, Evan. None of us would have ever approved that building being 40 feet off the road that's up on the top of the hill. I don't care what you say.
Well, I agree, I mean. that's-
Nobody would approve that building 40 feet off the road.
No.
Yeah, that was we had a lot of setbacks, we flew balloons, we had meetings out there, we did a lot of things. If you're gonna set the bar by that, we have definite issues with, setting that, I mean,
Yeah.
Oddfellows building is on the side of the road, and I
Didn't this
understand.
board originally approve that for 70 units?
74, that's
74, yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
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 But we're not looking for that. We
I know.
don't want to be
And
competitive.
I-
We're not
I-
looking for
Definitely
74
would not.
units.
I don't think we should be.
64 units,
yeah.
54 units. We're not looking for that.
I understand.
So we're not trying to compare, give us what you gave us there. We don't want that.
I don't think we should be worshiping Grist Mill.
They were going by.
No.
It's a separate building with rather different characteristics, including effectively being lower from many street levels, being there are a lot of differences here.
No, the reason I brought it up, because you guys
yeah.
were talking, how do you figure out the base units?
Okay, well,
Base units, and the only methodology we have to go by is what the board used for that.
that's the only one that's ever been
Right, so
tried.
That's never been
you're
tried.
talking
So how
about
many
other
would you
ways.
have though, Evan? How many would you say if you went by that, you need 6 acres and this, that?
Again, I know Grist Mill was 6 acres, but anything more than 1.3 was wetland and riverfront. It couldn't be used for development. The Conservation Commission wasn't going to allow them to go into the riverfront area. It was essentially land that didn't exist.
How many would you say? How many
No,
units would you say?
Well, it's
saying
land
it
that
didn't
existed,
exist
but it also took and
doesn't
buffered
work.
the property.
You
the
guys
project.
viewed it as buffering.
Yeah.
But
We
the
viewed it
bylaw
as
didn't
buffering.
require it to be used as
Right,
buffering.
well, that was
I'm just
one of
saying,
the
right,
things that we
that's what
took
I'm
into
saying. So
account.
there's different methodologies for
we
different
should
people.
Put it aside till we can look and see
Yeah.
exactly how many, because we're constantly just going off. They throw out a large number, then we settle it lower. Let's take the time and figure it out. We're not gonna get any answers.
Well,
tonight.
I understand that, but we still
I
gotta
think we
take,
have to.
we still gotta get some more answers worked out. We still have some more issues we have to get done here. I mean,
Maybe I can ask a different question, related to the same way. Let's assume the baseline, based on the square footage, would allow 32 units. Would the board consider any density bonus for walkways and/or easements for the trail?
we would always, well, I'd put up to a vote. I would
Yeah.
consider it, yes, but it depends on what it is.
Okay.
I mean, we have to see what it is. We can't just give a blind.
No,
yes,
I'm
we'll
just
give you
saying-
Density,
Yeah.
but,
No, so right now, we're at one option is 48 units, one option's at 52.
there are options.
So that's what we've presented to this
Yeah,
board.
yeah.
So I guess maybe the question is, that calculates the baseline based on square footage plus a 50% density bonus. Is the board, the board obviously can approve that, is the board willing to, and we're not taking a vote today, but I guess that's the feedback I'm looking for, is the board willing to, if they're satisfied with the type of easement and the walkway, would they be willing to provide a density bonus on a 32-unit baseline number?
Let's run it around. We'll ask them.
Well,
We do a straw
yeah.
vote, and I think that would be a way to handle it.
I think we can I think we should get to a straw vote at some point in the next 45 minutes or so. But I'll give you my opinion on waivers here.
Okay.
Waivers have been asked for a couple of things. One, based on having some park area in the back. I believe. That was part of it, wasn't it? Having the,
We're adding that, and we don't
Pocket
need a waiver. We wanted to put a park in the back for the residents because
Okay.
mainly to protect one of the concerns that the land trust raised, that people would be.
okay, well,
coming on their land.
I have some, whatever that comes down to, waiver or not, I have some misgivings there because it's basically going to be a dog pen, and it's right next to a whole lot of very nice water. And I'm not exactly sure that's where you want to put a dog yard.
Okay.
The path going back, I'm not personally inclined to give a whole lot of flexibility there. I mean, it's nice, a couple units maybe, but I don't see that as a huge, huge plus for this particular property. If it were a different property located just slightly differently down in that area, I might see more value to it. As to starting with a baseline of 32, I think that's high, given what actually could be put on there by right. I would be very surprised if you could get 8 buildings on that, each being a 4-family. It would take a lot of work. And I'm not sure that we should be starting at 32 as a baseline. I would start a little lower and maybe work my way up. My other concern, and this is an aesthetic one, but I think a very important one, is the height still concerns me. That's a pretty imposing structure. And if I would be vastly happier to see it come down a story. Another place that I'm concerned about relief that we might give is, while we may be able to waive the business on the buffer between that property and the neighbor, and that some relief would be granted there anyway if you were simply talking about a driveway that came from the neighbor's driveway to your driveway, that would be okay. But I'm bothered by what amounts to a driveway going halfway down the side of the lot and basically pavement right up to the edge. That concerns me. I mean, that said, the question, is this project suitable for VCOD? And under the powers that we've got, yeah, the project is, but I'm very, very reluctant to say go ahead on something where I think my inclination later on would probably be, no, that's just too big. So I want to get the no, that's just too big part out now before it costs you a pile of money.
Yep, it's helpful.
And I realize that there are some interesting financial concerns with this property. I've seen how big the mortgage is on it. It ain't worth half of what that mortgage is. And although I'd like to be able to give some relief, I don't think that the town of Chelmsford should be giving relief based on other people's, I mean, let the guy go bankrupt and then buy it from the bank. Probably be a much better deal and save you $1 million.
I know. And the only reason why I raised that
Yeah.
is so that the board doesn't think we're being.
No, I know exactly why you're
But
doing it.
we're stuck
Yeah.
in a financial
I realize
situation
you're
that's
stuck, and you
beyond our
may have to
control.
wait a year or two for the stuck to undo itself in the natural way. All right, those are some of my gut reactions. And if I had my druthers, it would be at least a story lower, and it wouldn't exceed 30. And then even there, of course, we'd have to
I
know,
think
look
we
at the
can play
ultimate
with the
plan.
30-some, but, yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Donald?
So, Philip, is it your hope and expectation this evening to walk away with some type of confidence with a number of units that this board's comfortable with?
Well, I think what we need to do, we can all night talk about what could be built there.
Yeah.
And you know, we have some financial constraints as to what has to go there in order to make this project work. And I think no matter who the applicant is to buy this site and pay what you have to pay for the site, no one's going to buy it and put 20 units. So
Yeah.
I think that what I'd love to walk away from is just like a straw poll, is to get a flavor for where the board's at, and then we'd have to go back and see if there's anything we can do to satisfy that with another option, maybe in January.
Right.
You know, I don't, objectively speaking, I don't like looking at these projects like how many single buildings can you fit, because that wouldn't work on Gristmill. We wouldn't have been able, think about it, 74 units, you'd have to put how many, 12 buildings? You know, I don't think it would be fair on our site. I don't think it would be fair on, across the way at Santander, because I think that could be a good project for the town, and if they have to be able to show how many single buildings they could put on the site, I just don't think it works with these larger sites. I think really, we gotta look at the size of the site, and to me, focus less on how many, buildings can you put in it, cram in it, and that's what we're gonna say is our baseline, even though none of us want that. So it might be that
Yeah.
30-something is all Michael is gonna be comfortable with, and so that's all I guess I'm trying to get a sense of. And then we'll just see. I can't make any commitments. We might be coming back in January with something that meets some.
Yeah, or you might
And
get
then,
priced out.
and then the board will, then we might just put it to a vote at that time. But let's at least get the feedback, because we really haven't had this discussion. We've sort of talked about
Bounced on it.
legalities and what you can do, what you can't do, but it's good to get some concrete numbers out there,
Yeah,
I think,
yeah.
helpful.
So with that, I believe this project or any project that is residentially based, it reflects what we're looking for in the center village and the master plan. It complements the master plan. Now, I am comfortable moving forward, looking at a square footage, using the calculations of a square footage and starting with the baseline of 32. Now, as far as exceptions that go on beyond that, really, I think it calls upon what Philip had talked about a little bit earlier, and that's addressing the needs of the abutter. Because obviously now you're going up, you're going out, you're doing something to get higher than 32. So I'm open to more than 32, but I'm also very sensitive to the abutter's needs and making sure, and Philip's kept the door open and they're willing to work with it. I think that's actually a huge liability for the developer going forward, but, and a risk, but, I mean, if they're willing to accept that, I'm okay looking at 32 with some exceptions going forward.
Nan? You have any comments? I'm gonna take and tie us down a little bit more before we get to the end of this, so you,
In terms of the density bonuses, I believe the land behind them is land trust, belongs to the land trust.
yeah.
And unless they came in here and said that they desire to have access via this property, I would not be inclined to do a bonus based on access to their property. I would like to see how many 4-unit buildings fit on this property as a baseline. I don't know what that number is. I don't have any gut feel at all what we would be waiving from. And I would really like to know what we're waiving from in terms of baselines. There's a lot that we have that the planning board has the ability to waive under the overlays. But you know, when town meeting gave us that right, they did so trusting that we would use that ability to use waivers to negotiate better properties, better buildings, more appropriate developments in our community. With the understanding that sometimes you just gotta give a little to get a little. And I'm concerned that this particular plan is not asking us to give a little to get a little. They're asking us to give everything. And that, I do not believe, is what we were authorized to do under the approval of these overlays. And that's my concern.
Tim?
Just a clarification, the rear of our property that is not conservation land trust property. It's actually, our property abuts the grist mill boundary line. So our boundary line, I think, goes on the other side to the grist mill, and now that's a condominium, whatever the grist mill condominium. But the engineer, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no land trust land directly behind our building, right?
So without a bridge, it wouldn't go anywhere.
Doesn't go anywhere.
just butts up.
We covered that at the last
Conservation
meeting.
land.
Yeah, we did.
The
Okay, so it's Conservation Commission, not Land Trust.
connectivity would have to go to the right.
We'd have to go, yeah, this would have
Okay,
to go
so
to
the same thing
Concom.
applies, is, I would expect them to request it
Yeah.
in order to get any kind of a bonus.
Tim?
I think it's too big. I think the height is, it's too high, and I think too many units. I would really love to know a base, so that we could go off to find the density bonuses, because I think we're just shooting out numbers here.
Yeah.
So, that's where I'm at.
Mike?
No, I agree with everyone that spoke already. I think this is good. I think a project right here is good, residential for the center village. I think it's too big. And I think we do need residential down there. We want people walking around the town, downtown. I agree. I'm glad the 40 feet, because I don't think this area needs commercial. Turning up 27, no parking, there's no out front on-street parking. I think it's too high. I think if 3 stories, there should be around 3 stories. And then I would not waive the curb cut waiver or the flat roof. I think this area should not have a flat roof next to those neighbors. It should be pitched just the way the bylaw was stated.
Yeah.
So that's where I am coming from. But I agree, I think we do need to get to a baseline. So if you want to just vote on tonight how we get to a baseline, I mean, we got to get there somewhere to have a starting point so that we can then give the.
All we're trying to do is get everybody's opinions now, so
Yeah.
we're not taking in.
Good. So,
Can I ask Mike a question? So I know that, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're allowed 2, but we're showing 3, so you don't like the 3 curb cuts. You'd want to keep it to just 2.
You got, you're showing on your plan, it looks like you got 2. One is like 3/4 of the length of the building, and having the 2 entrances in, and then it shows.
Right, it shows like
and
the
then you
U
got one
shape
going the
in and then the
driveway.
1. So we've got, I think the
Right.
U is 1 and 2, and then the 1 go along the back is 3.
Yeah, I just think that corner is very tight. I mean, that's the only area in town that has all the raised crosswalks for a reason, and now you're adding another curb cut very close to that corner.
Would you be okay with 2 is, I guess, my
Yeah,
question?
I mean,
Okay.
that's what it's allowed to, you have 2 now
Yeah,
on the property?
yep, okay. I just wanted to make sure, I know exactly the number, so I appreciate that. So 2.
That's just what I thought.
Thank you.
Hank, you got any
Yeah,
2 cents to put in here?
I've been looking at this a lot, and honestly, I'd like to see 3 stories that's in the code and 32 units max, including the bonus densities. I mean, if we have to subtract the percentages to get to, say, 15, to get to the 32, you know what I mean, to add the bonus densities, but
Yeah.
that's my max right there, 3 stories, 32 with the density.
I know you've said a lot already, but do you have any more to add?
Well, yeah, that is a problem of mine. Just one note on the baseline thing. I mean, you could say, all right, what's it, 80,000 square feet for this thing?
What?
So if it were 10,000 square foot chunks, and each one had a 4-family on it, that's a lot of usage. That's a lot of building, particularly when you have to have a space up the middle so you can get to them all. I think 32 may be a little high as a baseline. I think, you start assuming you got 6 4-families on there, that's 24, maybe 30. That's where I would start. But then again, I can see some argument here and there for some addition to and relief of that, but
I
not
was
huge.
going with their
No.
plan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
with
now,
the parking underneath.
yeah.
so if you
Parking
said,
underneath helps.
if 30 was the number, let's just,
Yeah.
now, the density bonus of putting a new building in, F3, what percentage are you happy with that?
I would want to keep it at 30 or 32, maybe go to 32. That's really as high as I want to go.
All right, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to give the feedback of what we're looking at. I've got some opinions too, but I wouldn't mind a flat roof if you built the structure up to hide it and put all your equipment behind it and you do all your stuff that we're supposed to do, that we didn't end up with on the top of the hill there. And we're gonna have some more questions about the top of the hill before the night's over too. you know, I think if you built a false roof coming back and you did that above the 3 stories and you had everything hidden, yes. I can't see us getting to the 48. I just can't see it happening. But see, the other question we come up with now, we're all focusing on units, and that's always what we've been told not to focus on. Because somebody could put in a bunch of 3 bedrooms. You still end up with a huge building. I honestly think, you gotta look at your height, and you gotta look at your size of the building, because if somebody takes and throws in 3 and 4 bedrooms, it changes it out, but. Now, I mean, you're showing me the picture, you know, we're all saying it's big. So, roughly what I'm getting from the board is, we're in the 30 range,
3 stories, 30-something.
yeah,
Okay, that's helpful.
all right?
That's very helpful.
I mean, all right, we got other questions too. The architecture of this building, that would be a whole different thing. I don't think, I think we're trying to, Nancy, this is probably more your expertise. If you were doing a building, you'd probably want it to look more like the Center Village type stuff, right?
Yeah, the mansard, I think, would fly with the Historical Commission,
Yeah,
because of the hotel,
yeah,
you know, because it pulls that look from the hotel. And the mansard, look basically says that the top floor looks like a roof, but really isn't.
yeah.
And with a mansard, I think you could go flat roofed above it, because
It looks,
it looks like it's, yeah, it looks like that 3rd floor is the roof. So in that respect, yeah. You know, they have come through with some interesting ideas in terms of bringing architectural details from some of the other buildings in town, to be able to carry it through and kind of make it visually compatible with the town. And that's one of the big concerns that I've had and I've heard from a lot of people, is that it looks like a castle. You know, and it's like, you know, that just offends people. So if we approve it under VCOD, and it comes through with a plan that we then can approve based on its details, I think the architectural details are gonna be a real concern, and that we do, because this is in the village, we do need to get historical involved in reviewing the architecture. A couple of the other things is just going to be the visual mass from the neighbor, because it does abut a residential property. It's directly adjacent to it. And from my standpoint, putting a driveway down that required buffer zone isn't gonna fly. Because protection of that neighbor, I mean, we protect our neighborhoods. This is Chelmsford, we protect our neighborhoods.
And I know that, you know, they said, if we get to that point, that's something
we
that
get
will
to
be
that
addressed
And
at
that
that
would
point.
have to be
Absolutely, and you can make your approval at this stage contingent on your hearing from that abutter, so we understand that's gonna be
The
part
other
of
thing I wanted to bring
process.
up too is, the parking lot plan that you showed us last time, I don't think meets Chelmsford parking lot bylaw. But would have to take and look at that.
Right, you mean some of the
further as
tandem
we-
spaces? Is
Yeah,
that
I
specifically?
don't think that would take and,
Yeah, I
meet
think
our
that's in the
bylaw.
details.
And we
That's
don't,
in the
and we don't think, we were trying to show on a plan that we could accommodate X amount of spaces per the bylaw.
Yeah.
From a marketing standpoint, we don't think we would need that many spaces, so,
Yeah.
you know,
we're just
But-
throwing things
and
out as-
obviously if the units come
Yeah.
down, that becomes maybe less of an issue.
So, basically, does anybody, how does people feel about the density bonus for the the walkway, because I feel if you got a walkway to nothing, it really doesn't
Yeah.
do
It's
much
not
for
worth a
it.
bonus.
I don't know how anybody else feels about that.
I'm with you.
Yeah. Yes.
You're thinking, I know.
Well, I start with the baseline at 32.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I know they're gonna come back with a 32 and say they're gonna want, everybody always does.
Yeah.
And I think that's a baseline. But, you know, if we're gonna allow a density bonus, I don't think it can be a walkway to nowhere. And, you know, in the park, you know, there's other things we can do about that Evan has mentioned. But,
But we're
as
not
it stands,
committed-
we're not committed
the
to it.
baseline at 32, because what I think I've heard from board members, they would like to be at that number.
Yeah.
So I think we need to establish a baseline based on how many buildings can go on there. And then.
I think we need to make a vote and say if that's what the board agrees with.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I hear what you're saying, and I agree to a point. But I also know that we're gonna come up with the Oddfellows building, which has got a lot of square footage in it. We've got, you know, it's got
Yeah.
the Fisk building, it's gonna have the bank on it. So it's not just
Yeah.
that, yeah, yes, I agree with you. I did look at that, I have thought about it. I
Okay,
think
look-
if we did the four units, it'd be really tough to take and do down there too.
Yeah, I just wanted, what's interesting about, if you were to ask for a yield plan, which is essentially the proof plan showing how many 4-unit
Yeah.
buildings you could get on
Yeah.
1.3 acres, don't be surprised if it's many more than 8 buildings, which according to what you're discussing here, would mean that the base would be higher than 32.
Yeah.
If you,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's-
just do some simple math.
No, well, that's why I was
Do some-
asking
Do some
asking you
simple math, your units, the size of the units, you regulate per COID. So a 2-bedroom unit is 900 acres, 900 square feet.
Yeah.
So that means the building has to be around 36 to 4,000 square feet for common area,
Yeah.
right? So that means the footprint of the building is somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500, 3-story building
Yeah,
on
Yeah.
1.3 acres. So do some quick math.
yeah, that's why I
You're
asked.
likely gonna be over 8 buildings.
Well, you
But
could,
that's with the
could
green
get
space
there.
we want, and
I'm just saying, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
not,
no,
it's
that's why-
not, it's
That's
not,
why I asked you what the distance was across the front of the building.
well, in,
Property,
300 feet.
300 feet, yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's gonna be like a horseshoe development, like you see with some of our 40Bs, townhouse style.
Yeah,
That's, so if that's the methodology go down, using some quick engineering, some concept plans, you're likely to get more than eight structures on 1.3 acres.
And
Now, the
just,
question about how far they need to be setback from one another, that's not really in here,
that's not in there, I know.
not in here. So you're probably gonna be relying on whatever the code minimum of the fire code setback is. When we did Turnpike 152, I think those were 12 feet separation. Those were single family. I don't know what the fire code is or the building code is,
Yeah.
separation between structures.
Yeah,
But I mean,
yeah, no, I.
it's an interesting methodology.
Yeah,
and just to refresh the board, I think the board knows, the way I calculated the 32 was based on the total square footage of the lot.
Right.
And doing the 5,600, like town council said, the 5,600 for the first 2 units and X amount of square feet for each unit thereafter. Divide that out by the square footage of the lot, came up to
Yeah.
32. So I was basing it on column 3 or whatever it was, and
Yeah.
that's how I came up with 32.
yeah.
So I think the board knows that, but I just wanted to refresh the board's memory. That's how I was looking at it, or describing at the last meeting. All right.
All right,
Well,
So, Henry, in terms of these density bonuses, they're all special permits, aren't they?
yeah, and they're all up to us.
Which means they're all up to us in terms of, do we believe that it's appropriate for that site?
Yeah,
And what we're saying is, we really don't believe that more than
2,
32 units is appropriate for that site, period. Whether or not they have the situation to qualify for a density bonus, as a special permit, one of the criteria for giving the use of that is, we believe it's appropriate for that site.
Actually, let me go on record again. I'm comfortable going over 32, so.
All right, we're all.
Good, Don.
Yeah,
Start, yeah,
yeah,
understood.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think, I don't see us getting to the 52. I
No.
don't see us getting to the 48.
I don't see us
even
getting
see us
past
getting to
32.
I've heard some people say it'd be a hard time getting past 40. So, you know,
Is part of the consideration the quality of the
Yes.
amenities?
Yes.
So maybe what I'm hearing from the attorney is, now that they have some feedback, maybe your plan was to spend some more time on the quality of the amenities, the green area, the public access, the quality of the trail, the location of the trail. I think we've discussed tonight, it's not gonna go connect to the left, that's land trust property. It's not gonna go straight ahead, it's likely gonna have to go to the right, which is privately owned property.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if it were connected, it would make a nice little
Right,
way
but
to step across the street.
a
and get to the
proponent needs to
park.
present that
Yeah.
That's
for
right.
consideration.
That's also land trust lien. You can't open that up and
That's
say,
right.
you can't just say that's.
Whether they go to the left,
Uncommoned.
straight, or right, they have to present something to you for your consideration. Meaning, you can't, you're not gonna grant density bonuses without having the details, plus the quality.
If you go to the right, though, the connectivity would be back over through Jack's property, right?
Right, our objective would be to connect Acton Road towards Cushing Place, so you'd have all that connectivity around
Right.
Beaver Brook. Hopefully someday the town gets some money to do the other side, and you have the objective of the plan is to have connectivity of all these parcels to Beaver Brook, to make it a walking center as opposed to just a driving center.
Which is the vision of the master plan.
Right, so you're right, we can't build something on someone else's land, but if we don't put it, then it's never gonna be helpful
Right.
if they put it, because, so I think it's sort of making sure each property owner
You
commits
had
to
to do
that.
that too for a fire lane also, though, right? Isn't
Um,
They wanted to have a,
That's where we're proposing also, yeah, the
so
fire
you
lane.
have to have a fire lane there on the right.
Yeah, that's where we're proposing the fire lane, but you wouldn't have to grant an easement or build a walkway.
Excellent, yeah.
We'd want to do that, because I think it does fit in with the vision of the town. Now, whether the board wants to give a bonus for that, that's the board's call, but we still think any walkway is important, because every project should be working towards that vision that the town's, sort of created. So I think it's good feedback.
Yeah.
I think we'll obviously need time to see what's feasible, and,
You all right, Nancy?
what is your meeting schedule in January?
8th, isn't it?
The next one's
The 8th and the 22nd.
all I got.
Thanks.
You're a lifesaver.
Put on both.
Can we do the 22nd? Because I think with the holidays, the 8th is going to be tight. I'd want to see, we got to figure out what we can do.
Hopefully.
Then get you some plans, if we can do something, give you time to look at it. So I think the 8th is tight.
I will not be here the 22nd, just so you know. I don't know if anybody else will be out, but that's,
I know a lot of, it's like this every
Time
time.
of year.
So let's go for the 22nd, and then if we find multiple people aren't going to be there, then obviously we have to deal with it. But would that be okay to continue
great.
to January
That'd be great.
22nd?
yep,
All right.
all right.
Give me my Christmas present later. I want to thank the board for their time. I appreciate it. Paul, thank you very much. Evan, and have a happy holiday, a healthy new year, and we'll see you in January, okay?
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Evan, since we've been talking so much about Gristmill, what's going on with the walkway up there? And I've heard some scuttlebutt about some situations up there that the condo association's already starting to be not in favor of the walkway because it didn't make it into their regs or something.
So, I'm not aware of any specifics. I'm not surprised to hear whatever you're referring to. What I can tell you is that every unit owner was made well aware of the decision, that it is in whatever legal documents each unit owner used at their due diligence in closing. Regardless of any of that, it's in your decision.
Yeah,
And just today, I sent an email that's 50% occupied.
yeah,
I sent a reminder email to Mr. Finnegan and Katie Enright, reminding them that prior to the final CO, per the decision, the easements in the easement plan will be required.
yeah,
So I don't think it really matters what the condo association thinks.
yeah.
And to be quite honest, if they have an issue, that may be a good opportunity, because they're gonna have to come back to this board, which will reopen the negotiation
Yeah,
for some additional connectivity.
yeah,
So,
yeah. I was
I've
just
been
curious.
assured, I've been assured by the developer that each unit buyer has seen and was well aware.
Yeah,
Your decision was very clear.
yeah. All right,
Very,
I
very
just,
clear.
I know they were getting tight for time, the end of the year. Do they have any type of time frame for us about?
So they're 50% occupied. The remaining 15, 16 units are likely to be late spring. So I think what will be interesting is when does that condo association get established? I know there's some provision. I think it's a third of the units are sold, 2/3 are sold. That's when the condo association is established. But there's nothing, I mean, we'll have to, unless the board is amenable to giving them an out, I think your decision is,
Yeah, I don't think they're getting out. I was just
Yeah.
curious what was going on.
Yeah,
'cause I
so
was
it's,
heard
yeah,
grumbling.
I had heard rightfully so that a couple of the unit owners on the lower level at the corner where
Yeah.
the trail comes pretty close to
Yeah.
the corner of the building were not pleased.
Yeah,
My guess is those units may have been a little less expensive, maybe.
yeah, yeah. All right, no, I was just curious,
I mean,
because I
it's
heard the
not, it's-
grumbling. and-
yeah, it's not only required to be public access and easement, it's gonna be signed.
Yeah,
Brick walk signs, public access, are gonna go up at the end of Cushing Place
Yeah.
and on the bike trail,
yeah,
encouraging people to use that.
yeah.
It's part of the deal.
All right. Do we have any other business to talk about?
Yeah, we got some minutes to approve.
Oh. Has anybody had a chance to go through these?
I did, and I sent
October
in
9th?
comments.
Yeah,
Comments adjusted?
I went through and,
I'm good.
yeah.
you good, Nancy?
Yeah.
All right. I would entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes of October 19th. October 9th, October 9th.
Happy holidays.
Good Christmas.
Hey, thanks, Paul.
We have
That
a
was-
second?
that- you know,
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is that the only one we have? I think so. There was another one here?
Nope, there was only
That
one.
was it. That was it. All right.
Make a motion?
Everyone here for
Looks like
January
you beat
8th?
me to it.
Everyone here for January 8th?
I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay. And on the 22nd, Henry, you're out, anyone
I'm out.
else?
Yeah.
Okay, we're likely to be seeing
March, but
Oddfellow Santander
Oh,
applicability.
nice, nice.
Likely sometime in January.
Great.
Can you ask me about those?
What?
Can you ask me about those? Can I just take a minute?
Because we've already closed our meeting and we already talked about.
Oh, but you can go over, just close,
Yeah.
then
Yeah,
just
you
go
can
over.
talk.
All right. Go ahead.
Are we-
Yeah, we're
Still alive.
I think they may think we're still on.
Do you
All right.
want to close the meeting, or do you want me to talk about that for a minute?
You have to reopen the meeting if you
Do
do
we-
that.
We haven't actually.
No.
You can close it.
Didn't know we were closing.
no, I just made a motion.
You just made a
Oh, no,
motion?
we didn't. Vote on
All
it.
right.
Still open?
Still open.
Still open? All right.
Oh, you haven't?
No,
Okay,
that's what they didn't know that.
okay.
Can I say that?
Yeah.
Can I just tell you, I haven't reviewed those plans.
Oh, okay.
Then we can't
That's all,
sign those plans.
that's all, I just wanted to tell you that. So I don't think that's part of the public hearing at all.
Nope.
I mean, it can be part of your meeting, but
Because Didn't we,
No, you didn't
So
approve
you-
you approved the decision
we
tonight.
approved the decision tonight?
That was it.
But we haven't,
And then one of the conditions in the decision is that final plans will be submitted for endorsement.
well, they have been
Prior
submitted.
prior to endorsement, you get letters from,
Right.
Those were dropped off today in my office,
All right.
so I have not reviewed them.
Oh, okay. So we sign
Plus-
up the
You
next one.
can't sign them
plus we
tonight.
need
So-
the recorded decision as well, which
So-
can't be
So what you're saying is I can't sign these tonight for,
You shouldn't.
correct.
correct? Mr. Harvey, do you have a comment or anything you want to say about it? You sat here for an hour.
The holidays.
Oh, I didn't know the plans. I'm sorry, I didn't know the plans were here. Like I said, they were just dropped off to my office today, so I would not have a chance to review them.
Yeah, we can wait and sign them off when they're reviewed, I suppose.
I can take and come in and sign them if you can review them. I don't have to have a meeting for this, right?
You usually have a vote to endorse the
We
the
did.
final plans. No, tonight you just endorsed the
Well,
decision.
may I make a motion then?
Can we make a motion?
May I move that we, that subject to final view and approval of the town engineer?
You sure you
we
want to do that?
authorize-
It's not on your agenda.
Well, the property
Review.
is on the agenda.
I understand.
I think that should be sufficient.
It's the board
I could-
decision. Normally you have endorse final plans.
Yeah, that's the way we normally do it, because normally they show up on separate nights.
That's the proper procedure.
Right.
But
they have not-
This particular applicant appears to be trying to combine.
Get it done.
Two steps
Yeah, I
in one
Sympathize with them.
one action.
I'm not opposed to what you were saying.
Okay.
Long as they have no problem with it, we could come back and sign it. I know they're just, yeah. I've already lost the
Yeah.
Lost your rubber band already?
Lost the rubber band already.
Here, I'll pull,
But,
I'm gonna hold it for you. I think,
board feels.
I'm okay with a conditional authorization
I'm
to sign.
fine with
I'm
that.
not.
You're
You're
not?
not? Oh, okay.
I wasn't happy watching the meeting that you guys waived the bond on the project because,
That's different.
well, I just think we're rushing this project. And, you know, we should do it right every time, not keep bending over hearing it for different people.
Could I make a recommendation is
Well, don't they have to wait for the
that
other
if you
people
could
to
sign the Mylars,
get an outcome?
I won't record
They
them
don't know- they know
until
that?
Christine has an opportunity. The most important thing for me is to provide just the first, I think the first page to my bank so I could start the financial process.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's it, I won't record them. But if it takes a couple more weeks, I'll wait a couple more weeks also.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, as I say, if,
Christina, how long will it take?
Usually about a week.
Yeah. Why don't we just hold off then? It's fine with me. We can hold off.
Hold off?
Just
All right.
so Christina feels comfortable.
all right, so then on January 8th,
Oh, that's fine, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just
All right,
so, I
that-
mean,
that's-
usually I
I mean,
have like
I-
another week so I can go back and forth with the engineer on it. And I'd been emailing him, back and forth trying to figure this out. And he said there wasn't any hurry for the Mylars. But,
I mean, I have no problem
that's
coming
okay,
in
so
and signing.
I wasn't
them.
expecting the
Yeah,
Mylars.
I have no trouble authorizing that.
Yeah,
But
it's
if they're
just,
gonna
it was
roll
only
the
for financing reasons. Like I said, I'd hold off on recording them.
All right.
Yeah.
If,
It's just my bank wants to know that,
Gonna be-
I'll get
Yeah.
I'll get the decision recorded,
yeah,
and then the plan.
After the appeal period.
So,
You need a motion on that, or?
sure. Why don't we, you want to do a motion, then I'll come in and sign them?
Okay, I have the motions on that we approve the signature of the Mylars, subject to completion of the inspection by town engineering.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I did have a question,
Oh,
Sorry.
though. But you just said it was okay to come back January 8th and do this, or you definitely want something signed, Mylar signed?
well,
You know how
it's up
banks
to the
are.
board.
I mean, because if Evan's point is
The most important thing is
significant, I'd
it's
rather err on the side of caution.
Yeah.
if
It's
the
not
applicant's
gonna get
okay with
Well,
it.
it ain't gonna get
not
signed
gonna get
until
recorded.
engineering's
Signed
happy.
until engineering approves it.
Are we willing to do this for every developer?
We basically do.
We do? I never, all right, I like following rules and regulations for everybody.
What are the what are the issues if we don't have, it's not on the agenda? Public agenda. Is that an issue?
Someone could challenge it, but more importantly, it's board business. I mean, it's been made clear to all boards that if something isn't on your agenda,
You can make that change.
you shouldn't be voting on it.
I mean,
Yeah,
Tobin,
that's the
Tobin
issue.
was on the agenda tonight.
Tobin was on the agenda.
Yeah, but the
though.
agenda is very specific to the action being requested by the board.
All right, then
I-
just,
Okay,
Well, in that
whatever
case-
you guys
Leave it
want.
as is.
All right.
Leave it to the
All right.
8th.
all right,
In that case, it's the 8th.
That's fine.
all
Thanks.
right,
It's no problem.
Sorry,
Oh, don't worry about it.
Okay.
all right.
Can I make a motion, sir?
Yes.
I
Okay, thanks, good
move,
night.
well,
Well, this is the
anybody
most-
else
last
have any new
motion that
business?
you're gonna make for the year, right?
Yeah, I move that we,
Second, move
Yeah.
on, bye.
oh, I was gonna drag it out.